I will do the introduction and then the prayer.
What's that, Mike?
I'll do the introduction first, then the prayer.
Yes, please.
Okay.
And I'm going to put it on mute in here so we aren't, if people come in, it won't be too loud.
Okay. Start as soon as it's in. Okay, it's 9:30, but let's give it one more minute since people are joining right now. For those who haven't heard, we do have a guest speaker today whom I'll introduce in just a moment. And of course, this is the second in our series of 3 visiting speakers on creation care. Okay, I don't see others coming in at the moment, so let's go ahead and get started. So as the second of our 3 outside speakers on creation care, we're very lucky to have Jessica Mauldin with us today. Jessica serves as the Associate for Sustainable Living and Earth Care Concerns with the Presbyterian Hunger Program. She resources Presbyterians as they address issues of faith, lifestyle choices, and sustainability. Jessica manages the Earth Care Congregation and Hunger Action Advocate Networks, and her background includes an emphasis on liberation theology and international studies. So we're very happy to have Jessica here with us today, and a couple of you just joined in. Hope and Misty and a few others, Mary, worked really hard at putting together our application for Earth Care Congregation status, and Jessica was just saying that those were pouring in last week. I think we've all continued our childhood tendency to turn things in at the deadline, and we did exactly that. But I think we have a really nice, thorough application package, and we look forward to hearing back from Jessica as she has time to review that. So, Jessica, welcome today. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us and share your wisdom about Earth Care with our congregation. If we can, we will now start with a prayer. So please join me in praying. Lord Jesus Christ, in you will all things in heaven and earth find their completion. You are beyond all things, and in you the whole universe holds together. All that is finds its fulfillment with you. To you be all praise and all power. Help us to be at one with the earth so that we know it as home. Help us to be reconciled to other living creatures so that we know them as neighbors. Help us to be at peace with each other so that we may live together in harmony. Just as you hold the whole world in your hands, hold us as well. Bless us with strength, fill us with love, and inspire us to care for all that is. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I just want to say while I'm doing that, thank you so much for having me with you this morning. It's been it's been so great to be with folks in a way that I couldn't pre-COVID, just because we weren't using the technology yet. And so I love getting to see faces of people, particularly as I'm getting ready to read your application. I will love knowing the names and the faces connected to that. So I'm really excited to share with you this morning about the Earth Care Congregation program. As you heard, it's just a piece of the work that I do for the Hunger Program, but I think I love this work so much because it's one of the places that it is so easy to see God's glory in the churches that are committed to doing this earth care work. I wanted to just name quickly, you heard that the Earth Care Congregation work is housed in the Presbyterian Hunger Program, which raises a few questions for folks sometimes, but just quickly, the Hunger Program, like we know that people aren't hungry because there isn't enough food in the world. And so we do work with partners and with congregations that addresses more and better food issues, solidarity with people and creating livable environments so that people can grow their own food. And so in doing work that looks like that, we were realizing more and more that earth care and climate change climate change issues were an important part of being able to make sure that people weren't hungry. And so in 2012, the environmental ministry's work became part of the Presbyterian Hunger Program. And so that's why this is the office that talks about sustainable living and earth care concerns. So when I start talking about this work, one of the first questions that I get sometimes is, why should my church care about the earth and care about earth care? And I think that you all seem to be a congregation that you are already understanding why this is important, or you wouldn't be interested in the program. But we know, Scripture makes it really clear that we have this charge to care for the earth. And it's a really central theme in the Bible. We see that there are over 1,000 references to the earth and to caring for the earth in the Bible. Even the name of the first person, Adam, is related to the word Adamah, which means ground or soil in Hebrew. And so, right from the beginning, there is the strong connection to the earth. And so in Genesis chapter 2:15, we're given this challenge to care for the earth by tilling and keeping the garden. And that command, the Hebrew word for tend, or sometimes the keep, as you see here, is the Hebrew word shamar, which it's more than just this like keeping things neat and tidy, right? It's it's to watch and protect. And so the word work in that, or to cultivate, comes from the word abad, which is to serve. And so we know that our challenge to care for the earth is more than just, it's not a lighthearted thing. Like, we're literally charged to guard and protect and serve the earth around us. And so that comes with a little more weight. And so we know churches like yours and other earth care congregations are really taking seriously this charge to till and keep the garden. And, as people of faith, we don't take the task of the caring, serving and protecting for the garden lightly. And it's one of the ways that we're able to live out the justice of the gospel by caring for God's creation and all of everything that inhabits it. The other thing is that, if for those of you who might be familiar, the Matthew 25 initiative that is part of the life of the denomination right now, climate justice and climate change and environmental issues are a big piece of that. The three foci of the Matthew 25 initiative, it relates to building congregational vitality, dismantling structural racism, and eradicating systemic poverty. And as I talked about before, the Hunger Program has seen climate care and climate justice work as a part of all three of those things. But just recently, the Presbyterian Mission Agency, the original language of that went to GA, also had a piece of militarism and climate care to it. And so that recently passed the board, so that will be coming to GA to add those two foci to the Matthew 25 initiative. And so we're really glad that will be there, because we know that doing that work is an important part of, like we talked about, how we can help address some of these systemic poverty and hunger issues. The Matthew 25 initiative is how one of the ways in which the denomination recognizes Christ's call to be a church of action. And so becoming an earth care congregation is one of the ways in which churches or presbyteries are able to respond to this Matthew 25 call. The other thing, as you know, Presbyterians are people of policy. And so there is a rich history of Peace USA policy that supports caring for the earth. And so since the 60s, even, the General Assemblies have been speaking to issues of environmental justice and environmental protection. So that's everything from there's policy on drinking water safety, protecting endangered species, cleaning up power plant pollution, climate change, the U.S. energy policy. And the major policy that supports the work that we do is the Restoring Creation for Ecology and Justice piece that you see there. That policy calls the denomination to specifically work for earth care and eco-justice. And so that policy passed in 1990, and then in 2010, there was a reaffirmation of a piece of that policy called the Call to Restore the Creation. And that piece of that policy is, it recognizes that caring for the earth should be a central concern of the church on every level. And so all of the things that we're doing, how does that impact the earth around us, should be an important piece of that. And so that is when the out of knowing that the reaffirmation of that was being proposed, that is when the Earth Care Congregation program was initially started in 2010. So that was a pilot program of about 9 churches that had done the work in 2009, were first certified in 2010. And the program has really grown since then. I don't have the 2022 numbers yet, but the 2021 numbers, there were 276 churches certified in 2010. So in 11 years, it's grown that much. And every year since I have been, every year since I have worked with the program, we have added more and more congregations. Even last year, the first year of people certifying after almost a year of pandemic, we added 30 new churches that were able to, in the midst of everything looking so different, be able to continue their earth care work, which I think is just such a testament to the good work of congregations, but also how important earth care work is. So in 2021, there were 41 states that had earth care congregations, which is terrific. And I'm working towards getting folks in every state certified. And I'm actually in the process of working with a church internationally that they're really excited about the program and want to be the first international church certified. This map is available on the pcusa.org/earthcare congregations. It's a Google map. If you want to play with it, you can see churches, they're color coded by year and where their location is. So it's kind of a fun thing to look at. So I left this slide in. This is a presentation I give to folks that are interested, but I just wanted you to see, for those of you that weren't involved in the application, this is the process that you all have been through to become certified as an ECC. So, folks form their earth care team, and that can be anything from your entire congregation to a couple of people to a 5th grade Sunday school class. We had a congregation that the Sunday school class decided that they wanted to do something around Earth Day, and they chose to become the church's earth care team. And with the help of some folks on various committees, they completed their application for their congregation and got certified. So once you do that, your session approves your earth care pledge, which we'll talk about in just a second if you're not familiar with that language. And then you do what you all have already done, which is apply to be the an earth care congregation. So the earth care pledge is what your congregation has committed yourself to. And so that's specifically that you will take action in each of these 4 categories, which is worship, outreach, education, and facilities. And that pledge really acknowledges that God has called us to be stewards of the earth and to restore the earth, to steward it and restore the earth just because it is our creation. And we know that the only way that we can really find environmental justice when there's justice for all that share this earth with us. Has everyone seen the Earth Care Pledge language? Have you all had the opportunity to do that? I see some no's. So the Earth Care Pledge is that your worship and discipleship will celebrate God's grace and glory, that your education will encourage and support each other in keeping and healing creation, that your facilities will be managed, maintained, and upgraded to respect and cherish creation, and that your outreach will encourage community involvement and public policy to protect and restore the earth. And in just a minute, I'll be sharing some stories of other Earth Care congregations and what this looks like for them. So as you're doing the work of being an Earth Care congregation, some of what that might look like for you. But do you all think this already sounds like the heart of where your church is? I suspect that it does, since your session has signed off on it. But I think it's really interesting that the Earth Care team usually knows this language and the session has signed off on it, but then folks in the congregation haven't seen it. And when they see it for the first time, they're like, oh, this is like such great language to put on what we're already doing. So I'd like to make sure that folks get to see that too. But like I said, I wanted to share a couple of stories about what some Earth Care congregations are, how they're living out this pledge, in hopes that if either you will resonate with some of this or that it might inspire some work in the coming years. So this first image here is from First Presbyterian Church in Hastings, Nebraska. And this is they did an outdoor service, which is one of the ways in which you can do the worship part, but they also every year plan their worship service to be their blessing of the pets service. And so they do that in a community park that is close to their church. You can see it in the background there. I think it's just across the street. And this year, this pastor got to bless someone's pet crawdad. So I think that that's one of the more unusual pets. This is also just a great way to connect with folks in communities that maybe would not come into your church, but the aspect of being outside and connecting with those folks through their pets is really important. There is a congregation that shared a story about they had a blessing of the pets service, and right after a woman, the week after a woman had her dog blessed, it unfortunately was there was a car accident, and so the dog passed, and the woman who really this pet was an important part of her life ended up coming to the church because she said, if these people cared enough to bless my pet, they would understand my grief. And so she ended up becoming part of the church because she knew that there were people that cared about her relationship and her connection to this animal. And so it's a great way of letting folks in the community know that you're a presence there, and a great way of connecting with folks. Another way, the outreach piece is an important part of what Earth Care congregations do. And so there are opportunities for advocacy on a national level, but also Earth Care churches play a really important role in your local issues. Shepherdstown Presbyterian Church in Jefferson County, West Virginia is a really good example of this. They had a company called Rockwool, which makes stone wool insulation, that was seeking to come into their town to open a factory, and they were going to be, the location happened to be within a mile of both a nursing home and an elementary school. And so there was a lot of concern about what that might do to the air quality, water pollution. And so, their drinking water was a concern, and no one in the city seemed to be concerned about that. And so this congregation, after doing some research, decided that that this was something that should be being raised and questioned. And so their session decided to pass a resolution citing and naming those issues. And then they were able to use the resolution from the session of their church to do a press release to get this in the news, and to raise awareness of the issue. After they did that, several other churches of different denominations came to them and said, this is something that we were concerned about too, but we weren't sure where to start or how to raise those concerns. And so this group was able to work and to bring those concerns to the local city government, and they were able to help. I believe that the resolution was that they ended up somewhere not in that location, and then they had to meet some extra requirements about making sure that they did not contaminate the area that they were in. And so just that, at a local issue, the role that Earth Care Congregations plays is really important. Some of the other things that I just wanted to name, this here is from First Presbyterian Church in Asheville, North Carolina, and they really made a big commitment they wanted to produce less waste all the way around. And so they're composting for their garden. They're using glassware and real plates at their church fellowship meals. And so this is from the first church fellowship meal that they had once they started composting. They had already been using real dishes for a long time. And this single plate of waste that you see here is all from a church fellowship meal. This is all of the garbage that they had from that, which I think is such a great thing, because often fellowship meals involve several large bags of garbage at the end of that. But this is a great thing that churches really can, by making some of these commitments, really can impact what's going into landfills. The other thing that we love about Earth Care churches is that a lot of what you're implementing in your own buildings are things that then end up coming home with members of your congregation. And so the photo here of the woman with the lawn blower, the leaf blower, is Hillsborough Presbyterian Church. And this is Robin Bedingfield, who is the head of their Earth Care team there. And when their facilities equipment lawn care equipment needed to be replaced, their Earth Care team did a lot of research. And so instead of buying the traditional gas powered things, they ended up buying an electrical leaf blower and electrical lawnmower and some other things. And what they found was an unintended consequence of this was that they have a volunteer team that does the groundskeeping, but they found that because this equipment is lighter and quieter, they had a wider range of folks that then volunteered to be part of that team. So some folks that were older that were not as, some of the equipment was too heavy. And she said, we also discovered that it changed the gender makeup of the volunteer team as well, because it was much easier to use some of this equipment, but it's just better for the environment as well. And because people had experience of using this equipment at the church, then several of those families, when they replaced their own personal equipment, ended up purchasing battery and electrical equipment as well. And so that's one of the hopes for the program, is that we hope that these practices not only become part of the life of the church, but it also helps pave a path for individuals in the congregation to do that as well. And also the things that you do as an Earth Care congregation shows up in the community too. And so like we talked about that with the blessing of the pet service, but another thing that we've seen a lot is when churches choose to install solar power or to become electrical vehicle charging stations, that is something that speaks to people in the community in a way that some other things don't. Spencer Presbyterian Church in West Virginia that you see here is one of my favorite stories, because this is a 7-member congregation that decided that they really wanted to start using solar energy. And so they spent quite a bit of time doing the research and making that happen. And so there are 7 members, and they they've installed these solar panels. So that's how they provide energy to their church. It's making so much energy, they've been able to sell it back to the power company so that it more than meets their own needs. But the other thing that it did when they held the service to bless their solar panels, they were able to connect that company to individuals in the community that were interested in solar power but weren't sure how to go about it. But they also inspired a second congregation. You'll see this building here looks a little different. This is a 20-member congregation in Glenville, West Virginia, and they had been interested in solar power, but had decided that they were too small of a church to make that happen. And so having this 7-member church do that paved a way for them to see that anything was possible for them. So this is a great story of there's no such thing as being too small to make that, to do big things for caring, to show that we care for God's earth. Particularly throughout the pandemic, but even before that, just the way in which congregations use the space around their building to be community gardens, to be green spaces that the public can access, and also the produce that comes out of church gardens that help support food banks and local feeding programs and that kind of thing. We love to see how folks are able to do that and to connect with the community in that way, and to, how caring for the earth and showing up in this way is a way that folks are able to address hunger as well. These photos are some of the ways in which, some of what worship and education can look like as a congregation and outreach. This photo here is from Peace Presbyterian Church in Florida. They have a large acreage where they are, and they turned that into sort of a walking path park, but they've made it a place to really invite people to come and to be outside in nature and to really connect with God, even if they are not folks that want to come inside the building to do that. So there are, throughout this path that they have set up, there are benches, there are labyrinths where people can walk. They have their Sunday school class paints rocks with different inspiring messages and leaves them for people that people can take as they're walking. And they have some of these peace posts that they have put up that have various prayers on them, places that people can connect. So kind of not a Stations of the Cross exactly, but points where people can stop and have some suggestions for some guided prayer. And it's just, as you can see, it's a really lush, green, great outdoor space for people. The photo here on the top is First Presbyterian Church in Rocky Mountains. They also, in the Rocky Mountains, sorry. I know Rocky Mount is a place where you all live as well, but they have some great mountains too. I think it was Jeff showed me the view of Grandfather Mountain, but this is, having outdoor worship services is a great way to remind ourselves that we are part of creation. Another thing that we see churches doing, this photo here of the petting zoo from First Presbyterian Church in Stillwater, Oklahoma, they do something every year that they call an intergenerational vacation Bible school. And so instead of doing a week doing a full week, they do Sundays of a given month, and they set it up so that it can be an intergenerational experience. And they often do things themed around various earth care activities, and then they offer opportunities for folks to connect with some of God's creation, like you see the petting zoo here. But we love that they have made it intentional to lift up caring for the earth as the theme, and then they do that in ways in which the whole family can be a part of that. So they are a great example of that. We also see churches doing community events. This was an event that did education around monarch butterflies and about being able to plant plants that attract those. And they this church also has a monarch way station, so they release butterflies that day at this event. We see folks doing participating in things like the Climate Action Week in 2018. This is Elkin Presbyterian Church in North Carolina. They are in Salem Presbytery, and they partnered with New Hope and were able to sponsor this protest die-in event at the local Natural History Museum to really raise awareness of the impacts of climate change and what that's looking like. And this was another great event that this outreach opportunity allowed them. The oldest person that participated in this event was in their 90s, and then they also had a baby. So it was a great way. Earth Care is one of those things as folks look at, like, what does the demographic of the church look like, and how do we get folks across lines to participate. Earth Care is a really great way to do that. A couple of things I just wanted to note, that if you're not aware of the hunger program, and specifically me, I am here to be a resource to your church as well. Not only, I'm sharing today, but we also produce some great resources. The Climate Care Challenge is one of those, if your church hasn't used this yet. My office produces a Tread Lightly for Lent calendar every year. So the 2022 version is online. So that might be a tool for you. Some of the other things that I've done is help churches and presbyteries think about, how do we make green checklists or develop green policies about how we do our meetings. So that's something, if you all haven't done that and are interested, I can help do that. We also have the photo here in the middle is from, we partner with a group that focuses on climate change called Blessed Tomorrow, and they have a lot of great resources. And we were able to produce a video on what the PCUSA denomination is doing around climate care. But Blessed Tomorrow has a lot of great messaging tools. So how do you preach about some of these issues? How do you share if you're out in the community? They have a training that they offer that you can go through online. We offer that live sometimes, but they have a lot of great data. If you are people that enjoy that, some of their content is so digestible, but also really they have excellent data available on these issues. So those are just some of the things that we can help churches. So if you're looking to do further Bible studies or that kind of thing, I'm here to help support that. The other thing that I just wanted to note is that, so there are so many different Presbyterian related entities or offices. Some of those are denominational offices, and some of those are affinity or grassroots related Presbyterian groups that, as you're working on various Earth Care issues, that might be helpful to you. So the Earth Care Congregation Certification Program is part of that, but also at the denominational level, the Office of Faith-Based Investing and Corporate Engagement is something that might be useful to you, because they are, when we talk about companies and the impact that they're having on the earth, a lot of the engagement around that with those companies, and how do you as an investor care for the earth happens through that office. Presbyterians for Earth Care is a grassroots group that my office works with quite a bit, but they are their own entity, but they also do a Lent calendar and an Advent devotional. So they are a great resource. They also have a toolkit for how you connect churches across a presbytery. And then a couple of other groups, Fossil Free PCUSA, Presbyterians for Carbon Dividends. And recently there's been a group created for Spanish speaking congregations. So if you're ever doing anything with your community that Spanish language resources and that kind of thing is helpful, Red Latina is a great group that is helping us connect with Latino congregations right now. So these are some groups that you might hear about, or you might find they have resources that are useful to you. And that is, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. I think that was a lot of information very quickly. But if there's anything, if you have questions about anything, or I will hand it, I guess, back to Michael to facilitate that. But I'm happy to answer anything or say a little more about anything you're interested in.
Yeah, that's a great springboard for conversation. So I see Jeff raising his hand. So anyone who has a question, unmute yourself and step right in.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation, Jessica. And this occurs at a great time in the history of our church. We have planned, we have executed a fundraising effort that has succeeded in providing the funds for construction and renovation of two of our buildings and one new building. One of those being a fellowship hall. Creative juices are flowing rapidly on how we can implement many of these ideas into that particular, the operation of that building. And my thought to our group is that I think it's an awesome idea going to real plates and glasses. And along with that, in our kitchen operation, we'll need to be considering a dishwashware, commercial, low water type equipment in order to facilitate the use of those. Also, and once again, this will be a point to our group. Does North Carolina, or the Presbyterian Church through does North Carolina Presbyterians have a lobbying effort for the state of North Carolina, or is that combined in some type of multi-Christian or religious organization as such for the promotion of more green opportunities? To anybody's knowledge? If not,
I'm not aware of that, Jeff. We'll look into it, but on the
if
first
not, it
point,
may be a good idea through this effort to unite the presently certified Presbyterian campuses and considering that.
that's a
Jeff,
great
there
idea.
are two groups. One is called North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light. And then the other is the North Carolina Council of Churches. And Jessica maybe knows of others, but North Carolina Interfaith Power and Light is specifically looking at creation care issues. And Jessica, you can probably say more than I can about that.
And they are part of the Council of Churches here in North Carolina. I think their staff work for North Carolina Council of Churches.
Yeah, so those were actually the two groups that I was going to suggest you start there. Interfaith Power and Light has a national office, but then they also have state chapters, and they are usually a great place to start because they will also know who some of these other groups are that are working. I also, Creation Justice Ministries is an ecumenical organization that is, they work in Washington, D.C., but they often have kind of a finger on the pulse of other things that are happening in specific states. And so they might be a good resource for, oh, this is a specific opportunity in this state that needs some advocacy around that. I also know that you do in North Carolina have some great Earth Care congregations that are super involved. The woman that actually helped start the program is a member of First Presbyterian Church in Asheville. She is a wealth of knowledge and information. And there is also he is in Charlotte Presbytery, but there's another gentleman that has long been involved at a state level with, he worked for the agroforestry office or something like that. And so he's been a great resource when I need to know if something's going on in North Carolina. I usually start with him. So that's a connection I could make as well. But Interfaith Power and Light would be the place I would suggest you start as far as that's concerned. And the other thing I just wanted to say in response to Jeff's comment about your using real plates and dishwashing, a story that I didn't share and a thing that I try to encourage churches to do is to really celebrate that and really make that a part of, this isn't just like, oh, we have to wrestle up whoever we can get to volunteer to do this, but there's a congregation in Minnesota that they really, this is a ministry opportunity. This is a way that, for you to be connected to the life of the church. And they named that group of people that volunteer over the course of the year, their Bubble Brigade. They, as part of worship, they gave them special aprons that say Bubble Brigade on them. And they really celebrated that. And they had more people volunteer to wash dishes than they ever imagined that they would have. And so I would just, they had to set up a schedule so that folks just worked a quarter at a time because they had so many volunteers. So I would just encourage you, like, as you're doing that, to really make it fun and to really celebrate it. And I think that you will find that people really, I think, often are looking for ways to contribute to the life of the church. And as we celebrate that, ministry looks like a lot of things that aren't just preaching on Sunday. People like to be connected to that. And so I would just encourage you as you're doing that to find what sings in your congregation about that. But the Bubble Brigade is a great way.
And Jeff, to your first point, we are working closely with the renovation committee. Alex Bernhardt in particular has been very active in pushing them to make the renovation and new construction as green as possible. And our committee has offered to partner with them in finding resources. And we have asked that the architect provide us with a suite of alternatives that could be add-ons. And one example is that we've been so inspired by other congregations that have put in solar panels, such as we heard from our speaker last week, that we will hopefully have an option for doing that, with an opportunity for families or individuals to sponsor an individual solar panel. And then just last week, someone suggested this might be an opportunity, going to one of Jessica's remarks, to also provide congregation members an opportunity to purchase solar panels through a joint program. But we're in the early days and weeks of those efforts. But Alex has been great at leaning and reminding that committee repeatedly that we have such a strong interest in doing the right thing. And of course, there are economic benefits to the congregation as well as the environmental and community benefits.
I knew you guys weren't snoozing.
And I did just want to say too, Jeff, which you may already know some of this, but the good news, at least from the Mance, is with all of the renovations that have happened there, there's now all kinds of insulation. There's up-to-date electricity, up-to-date plumbing, all kinds of things that didn't exist there before. So while aren't going to be any solar panels on the Mance, the energy efficiency of the facility is, I don't even know how many times different it's going to be than what it was before. So, and that's also the intention in the Rumpel House as well, is to upgrade all of that and to add insulation so that we're making things much more energy efficient than they were. So there's even some good steps happening in the renovation pieces.
Well, I would just add that it would be helpful for those on this call or other members of the church to continue to reinforce the interest of a broader congregation in that. Mike's correct. I've said a few things, but I've occasionally felt a little alone out there. And no question that things will be better. Let's take the Rumpel House, but good, better, best. How high do we want to aim? Because it is expensive on the front end. There's just no denying that. We need to continue to make aware. I'm not sure that anybody on this call is on either the building committee or the properties committee. So those folks need to know of our ongoing interest, and we have to push a little bit gently, politely, to spend enough money on the front end, because these are, as Jeff said, sort of once in a lifetime chance. Once we put the windows in, they're in there. Once we decide how much insulation to put in, that's it. When we pick the HVAC, that's it. So now, as Jeff said, is an excellent time for us to be mindful of this. We don't want to be profligate. We don't want to spend money just because we have it. And it is judgment. There's no absolute right and wrong to how much you spend up front on greenness. I think probably everybody's aware of LEED, L-E-E-D, and has been involved with that in the past. Actually, John Calvin's son is a LEED certified architect. So John is aware of both the benefits and the costs, the bureaucratic fine print you have to go through, which is obnoxious sometimes. And we don't necessarily have to aspire to be a LEED's platinum campus, but we can watch and look at some of what the criteria are there and be mindful, and maybe not platinum, but maybe we could be silver. Who knows? Thanks.
Well, I noticed that there's several members of the session on here, and you all have an ability to maybe talk to some of these people on the building and on the properties committee, and that would be very helpful, I think, because as Alex says, a lot of people just don't think about this or don't even think about earth care. It's pretty much been on our committee, and we need to spread this out among the congregation so that they realize that it is important for our church. And we've made a statement, and we're going to hopefully be an earth care congregation, and that's going to have a lot of meaning for our church in the future. It's going to be part of our mission.
And I would jump in quickly to name, if you aren't familiar with this program, and if, you know, there is a cost at the front end, as you mentioned, to some of these things. The investment and loan program offers something called a Restore and Creation loan that is low interest. And so if the financial part of that is a factor for your congregation, lots of Presbyterian churches have been able to add solar panels and do other environmentally conscious updates to their churches through this Restore and Creation loan program. And so if that's something that you all are interested in or need connection with that person, if you'll let me know, that is an option that might be available to you as well to help with that on the front end. So. Are there any other?
Yes, I think we would like to have that information at your convenience. It's interesting. We did such almost unbelievable job on the fundraising that we may not be in the loan situation. So it's a matter of our intent and our will and our good judgment, prudent. We're Scotch-Irish, conservative, fiscal spenders, and we're not going to blow money, but we might or might not need the loan. It's mostly just the will and the determination and the good judgment, the reasonable judgment about how much is reasonable to spend.
Are there any other questions about resources, or I will say specifically, you will have your certificate in time for Earth Day, well in advance of that. So if as you're planning, you want to celebrate that in an even deeper way, you'll have your certificate. I'll also be sending a press release that you can use for your local paper to help celebrate your certification. And I think those were the couple of things that I wanted to just say specifically, but.
I'd like to ask maybe Kathy or somebody, what's our thought about publicizing that document either on the website or on an insert in the bulletin? I'm all for it, but frankly, at the beginning of your presentation, when you read it all out, I was saying, wow, wonder how many people really are. Some people are going to read that and say, oh gosh, I didn't know all that. And so I do think at some point the congregation needs to be exposed to what it is that's already ex post facto. It's already been signed up for, but they need to know what that really means.
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if the creation care people or Stephanie or anybody else has some ideas now that that's gone through the session and been approved, what the plan is. I don't know, but I think that's a great question.
I don't think we have a plan, but I was thinking the same thing, Alex, that it would be good to share it more widely for sure. So I think we need to, at our next meeting, figure out a way to do that. Jessica, I have a question for you. I'd love to know how you got into this type of work and ministry within the Presbyterian Church.
I think that it is a good case of sometimes God equips the called and doesn't necessarily call the equipped. I attended a Presbyterian affiliated college, and I was going to be a social worker, and second semester of my junior year ended up discovering liberation theology and felt a strong sense that needed to be a part of whatever I was going to do in life. And the same year that I was doing that, the Hunger Program was developing a program called Enough for Everyone, which was looking at how we live out our faith values based on what we purchase and what we do. And so after I graduated college, I taught at a children's home in Haiti for a year, and then ended up after being through 3 hurricane seasons there, or not seasons, but 3 hurricanes, decided I needed to come home for a little bit and regroup. But it also really got me thinking about root cause issues and what was happening in the US and how folks from the US showed up in places like Haiti, what the relationship was there. So I am from Southern Indiana, and when I came home, the woman that had been the chaplain at the college suggested that if I just needed a job while I sorted myself out, that perhaps an administrative assistant job at the denomination could be a good option. So I started working there, and just ended up, as the position with Enough for Everyone opened, instead of hiring someone, the woman that was the coordinator at the time said, "You've been doing this job in the absence of a person doing it, and so we're just going to promote you to that." And then with changes in staffing, I inherited the some of the environmental work too, because I was seeing a lot of it was overlapping anyway. And so there's still things that I am learning about environmental issues and earth care, but I had a good theology background to help do some of the interpretive work. And I have a liberal arts background, which helps in the creating resources. And, I am the first to admit that often I learn as much from earth care congregations as I'm able to help them with. But I think it's just one of those, I believe really strongly in our connection to the earth and that we are all dependent on each other. I'm a foster mom as well. And so this was just an opportunity for me to kind of live out what I understand my relationship to be to God's creation. So, yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for being here today. Jessica is going to close us with prayer, but let's all give a quick round of applause to Jessica for the wonderful presentation and insight she's given us today.
Well, and again, I'm happy if you're working on something and you want me to come back and talk through things, I'm happy to come back anytime. So
Great.
I will share this. This is actually a prayer from the Book of Common Worship. As you're doing earth care related worship planning, I would say that there's a lot of great environmental and earth care liturgy in the new version of the Book of Common Worship. So this prayer is from that. And so I will close us with this. So for the good world, for things great and small, beautiful and awesome, for seen and unseen splendors in the world, for work to do and strength to work, for the comradeship of labor, for exchanges of good humor and encouragement, for the church into which we have been called, for the good news we receive by word and sacrament, and for our life together in the Lord on this planet. We praise you, O God. Amen. I hope that your Sunday morning worship is lovely, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Jessica. And just to remind everybody, we have our third and final Creation Care Sunday speaker next Sunday. David Jones, thank you. Former director of the North Carolina Zoo will be with us next week.
Look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks again, Jessica.